The average American isn't worried about becoming rich overnight. They're worried about something much simpler. They're worried about whether they could handle a $500 emergency tomorrow. Imagine your car breaks down on the way to work. The repair shop calls and says it'll cost $500. Maybe your refrigerator suddenly stops working. Maybe you get an unexpected medical bill. Maybe your pet needs emergency treatment. Whatever the situation, you need $500 right now. No waiting. No saving up over the next few months. The money is needed today. It sounds like a manageable amount. After all, $500 isn't a luxury vacation or a down payment on a house. Yet for millions of Americans, coming up with $500 on short notice will be a major financial crisis. And that's exactly what makes this issue so important. A $500 emergency isn't really about the money. It's a test. A test of financial stability, savings habits, and whether someone is living with a financial cushion or one unexpected expense away from disaster. Most people assume financial emergencies happen to other people. We like to think we'll have time to prepare. But emergencies don't schedule appointments. They don't wait until payday. They don't care whether you've had a good month or a bad month. Life happens when it's least convenient. Cars break down. Appliances fail. Medical issues appear unexpectedly. Family emergencies arise. The reality is that emergencies are not rare events. They're part of life. The question isn't whether an emergency will happen. The question is whether you'll be ready when it does. For many Americans, the answer is no. A surprising number of households have little or no emergency savings. Some have a few $100s available. Others have nothing at all. This creates a dangerous situation where even relatively small expenses can create major financial problems. A $500 repair bill doesn't just cost $500. It often triggers a chain reaction that can last for months or even years. Let's imagine two different people. Both receive the exact same $500 emergency expense. The first person has an emergency fund. They transfer $500 from savings, pay the bill, and move on with life. It isn't pleasant, but it isn't a disaster either. Their finances continue normally. The second person doesn't have savings. They put the expense on a credit card because they have no other option. At first, it seems like the problem is solved. The bill gets paid. The emergency is handled. But now something new appears, debt. Debt changes everything. A $500 emergency paid with savings costs $500. A $500 emergency paid with credit cards often costs much more. Interest begins accumulating. Minimum payments appear every month. If additional expenses happen before the balance is paid off, the situation becomes even worse. What started as a single emergency can slowly grow into a much larger financial burden. This is one reason why so many people feel trapped financially. It's not always because they're making terrible decisions. Often they're simply reacting to situations without having enough financial resources available. When someone is living paycheck to paycheck, there isn't much room for surprises. Most of the paycheck already has a job. Rent is waiting. Groceries are waiting. Utility bills are waiting. Insurance payments are waiting. Transportation costs are waiting. By the time everything gets paid, there may be very little left. Housing alone consumes a huge portion of many household budgets. In some areas, rent or mortgage payments take up 40% or more of take-home income. Then there are groceries. Food prices have increased significantly in recent years. Families are paying more for the same basic items they purchased just a few years ago. Transportation adds another layer of pressure. Car payments, fuel, insurance, maintenance, and repairs all compete for the same limited pool of money. Healthcare costs create additional uncertainty. Even people with insurance can face deductibles, co-pays, prescriptions, and unexpected medical expenses. Then there are the expenses people barely notice anymore. Subscription services, streaming platforms, cloud storage, mobile apps, delivery memberships. Small recurring charges quietly draining money every month. Individually, they don't seem dangerous. Together, they can easily add up to hundreds of dollars per year. Most people don't wake up one day and decide to waste money. Financial pressure often comes from dozens of small decisions and obligations accumulating over time. The problem becomes even more difficult because of inflation. Inflation quietly reduces purchasing power year after year. A paycheck may be larger than it was 5 years ago, but if housing, food, insurance, and transportation costs have increased faster, life can still feel harder. Many people experience this firsthand. They earn more money than they did in the past, yet somehow feel less financially secure. This creates a dangerous cycle. Without savings, emergencies get charged to credit cards. Credit card balances create interest charges. Interest charges reduce available income. Reduced income makes saving more difficult. The next emergency arrives before the previous one is fully resolved. More debt gets added. More interest accumulates. Over time, what began as a simple emergency becomes part of a larger financial problem. The psychological impact is just as important as the financial impact. Living without an emergency fund creates constant stress. Every strange noise coming from the car becomes a source of anxiety. Every unexpected phone call feels threatening. Every medical symptom creates worry about potential bills. Financial insecurity doesn't just affect bank accounts. It affects sleep, relationships, decision-making, and overall quality of life. That's why emergency savings are so powerful. An emergency fund isn't just money sitting in an account. It's peace of mind. It's flexibility. It's the ability to handle problems without immediately creating new problems. Even a relatively small emergency fund can dramatically change someone's financial situation. The goal isn't perfection. The goal is creating a buffer between everyday life and financial disaster. Many people hear recommendations about saving 3 to 6 months of expenses and immediately feel overwhelmed. That number sounds impossible, but financial progress usually starts much smaller. The first goal isn't $10,000. The first goal might simply be $500, then $1,000, then gradually building from there. Small wins create momentum. Momentum creates habits. Habits create long-term results. Building an emergency fund requires one simple principle: spend slightly less than you earn. That sounds obvious, but it's surprisingly difficult in practice. It often means tracking expenses carefully, identifying unnecessary spending, reducing recurring costs, avoiding impulse purchases, finding opportunities to save consistently. The amount doesn't matter as much as the habit. Saving $20 per week may not seem impressive, but over time it creates a financial cushion that wasn't there before. Another important lesson is that income alone doesn't solve financial problems. Many people assume they'll finally feel secure once they earn more money. Sometimes that happens, but often lifestyle inflation appears instead. Expenses rise alongside income: a larger apartment, a newer vehicle, more subscriptions, more dining out, more spending. Before long, the additional income has disappeared. Financial security comes not from how much money you make, but from how much flexibility exists between income and expenses. Emergency funds also create opportunities. When people aren't constantly worried about financial surprises, they can think more clearly about long-term goals. They can focus on reducing debt. They can begin investing. They can make career decisions without feeling trapped. Financial stability creates options, and options are incredibly valuable. One of the biggest mistakes people make is waiting for the perfect time to start saving. They tell themselves they'll save once they get a raise, once debt is lower, once expenses decrease, once life becomes less expensive. The problem is that perfect conditions rarely arrive. Financial security is usually built during imperfect circumstances through consistent action over time. Imagine two people starting today. One decides to ignore emergency savings because they don't think they can save enough. The other begins setting aside a small amount every week. At first, the difference between them is almost invisible. But after 6 months, one person has a growing emergency fund while the other has nothing. After a year, the gap becomes larger. When the next unexpected expense arrives, their experiences are completely different. That's why the $500 emergency matters so much. It reveals whether someone has financial breathing room or financial vulnerability. It reveals whether small problems stay small or become much larger. And perhaps most importantly, it highlights the difference between reacting to emergencies and preparing for them. Financial freedom isn't about avoiding every problem. Problems will always exist. Cars will still break down. Appliances will still fail. Unexpected expenses will still appear. The goal isn't eliminating emergencies. The goal is making sure emergencies don't destroy your financial progress when they happen. The truth is that a $500 emergency isn't really a story about $500. It's a story about preparation. It's a story about habits. It's a story about whether you're building a financial safety net or hoping nothing goes wrong. Hope is not a financial strategy. Preparation is. Every dollar saved today creates a little more protection tomorrow. Every smart financial decision creates a little more stability. And over time, those small decisions can be the difference between a minor inconvenience and a major financial crisis. The next emergency will eventually arrive. That's not pessimism. That's reality. The question is simple. When it does, will you be ready?